Look, when my dad worked at St. Joe Lead and he needed the washer or dryer worked on, he simply said, "Hey, Al, Tim, Bill, I got the Crown Royal, can you help me out?" Well, what I do, a guy who actually worked at St. Joe with his brother in the electrical business, the Halama brothers, the late great Mike, we're going to get to him in a moment, but David, whenever I have electrical problems, I say, "Dave, help me. I've got the Crown Royal." So I do have the Crown Royal, and we're celebrating the season. I even brought from Coons Market some club soda, so I'm going to make him a little holiday cocktail, and then we're going to reminisce a little bit about his brother. Now, my dad would be screaming at me because he would say, "You're supposed to put the whiskey in first." It's been a few.
Always.
I know.
Always.
Hey, look, it's been a few years since I've done this, but I've said in my video how much I used to love being the guest bartender in our house. His father, God rest his soul, we had a few shots together at the Monaca Coronet Band Room. One of the greatest sayings of all time, whenever you'd be at a restaurant, this is my classic line, "Mr. Halama," and you guys would say, "Can we get some ice cream?" He'd say, "Get in the car, we got ice cream at home." So, and he taught shop for many years at that great school that is Aliquippa. Shandon, that's for you. And for my father, I'm actually working tonight. I'm headed to Midland, Pennsylvania to the St. Anthony Club to get ready for the Feast of the Seven Fishes. And Dominic Crivelli of LA Concrete, you know the door is always open. You are truly a gold guest. We love talking to you about your days growing up and coming to this country as an immigrant and becoming an incredible human being, father, husband, and entrepreneur.
Very good friend of mine.
I know. Listen, that's familiar for Mr. Crivelli. Now, let's talk about your brother Mike. Getting close on this, B. There he is. I absolutely love Mike.
Tom Pizzitti, they're both passed.
Both past, but legends.
And Tom was the plant superintendent at St. Joe.
See? It's all family.
It all comes full circle.
It does. It does. Here he is again. I got to show you this guy. I love this guy. What these two gentlemen did as young men building this brand is second to none. So let's just talk about how in the world two young guys who grow up in Monaca end up becoming truly one of the best in the business. So some of the major steel makers in this region, plants, factories, people in technology, they lean on the expertise of the Halama brothers. So how did it all start for you guys?
Well, we started in 1977.
Okay.
Then we started doing whatever we could get our hands on, like old houses, which stuff, the type of work we really don't do now, but adding outlets, changing breaker panels, doing all that. And it was funny, the first big kind of commercial job we got, Mike had been dating Clifford Schnuth of Mecklen's Lumberyard. His wife was one of the Mechlin girls, okay?
Right.
They put a ready-mix concrete plant in the back of their facility there, and we did all the electric and the conduit and everything. So that was like kind of our first big job. We had no trucks then. I had the equivalent of like a little MG, and we would put the convertible top down and throw conduit in the back of that, and that's how we kind of started, little by little. And you know, we're the old school Italian where you saved your money all the time. You didn't go out and get loans. And which another one of our mentors, Vince Diagardia, he always told us, he said, look, when you go into business, he said, if you have to rent a tool, but you know, you have to buy it, but rent it first, make your money, then go buy it. He said, because when you go out and take all these loans out, you get a new partner, and that's the bank, and they make all the money.
Listen, I got to tell you about Mr. Diagardi, truly a legend.
Can I have a salute while we're...
Yeah, salutes. You can. If I wasn't working, I'd have 2 or 3. All right, listen, and if you have any connections, tell the Monaca Sons of Italy to stay open past 11 o'clock so I can get over there.
That's a whole nother, that's a whole nother program.
My favorite place on the planet. But anyway. So they were in the monument business back in the day. So then Crucible Steel said, could you come to Midland, bring some of your grinders to kick off some of the rust of this steel? And they said, that might destroy our grinders. How much are you going to pay us? Well, they gave them the figure and they said, we'll be right down. So this is how smart Vince Diagardi is. They're divvying the money up between the brothers, and they're like, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to do this. And what are you going to do? I'm going to do that. And they said, Vince, what are you going to do? So I'm going to go buy more grinders. And that's the birth of Rome Metals.
Yeah.
And now, believe it or not, that son, the great John Diagardi, Rome Monument, Rome Inspirations, back in that metals business again. So we love the steel industry, a lot of things happening. I'm going to continue to talk about the Nippon acquisition of U.S. Steel tomorrow, some information that I got earlier today from a man who really knows all about that industry. I think you're going to find fascinating, so please tune in tomorrow after CBS Radio News at 5 a.m. But speaking of that industry, and you were so fortunate to be a part of St. Jolette. I was only in there one time. My father, my godfather, my late cousin Bernie, my cousin Joey Mort, so many family members. But we grew up because of those middle-class paychecks from those steel workers and people who worked in manufacturing. And those jobs are still so important today. And Mike would talk about this all the time, about you have to continue to tell people about jobs for working-class people going from one generation to the next. We can't lose those jobs.
No. And they say college isn't for everybody either. There's a lot of good jobs out there that you could make good money, but like in the trades, they're all good. And a lot of these businessmen are starving. That's the biggest complaint I hear from like plumbing contractors, electrical. It's just hard to find good people, you know? Not that I want to get down on the generation.
I know what you're saying.
The work ethic that was hammered into our heads, and we became the generation of nicey to our kids, and this is maybe a result of it. That there are good kids out there, don't get me wrong,
but they need to get some dirt out of
there's a difference of the way we were taught to work and cut grass and paint, and like whether you wanted to do it or not, you did it, right?
Absolutely. 14th Street growing up, your parents, your dad was a shop teacher, so he had that gift too.
Yeah.
But was that work ethic always instilled in you and your brother?
Oh yeah.
Give me some stories. Go ahead.
Well, one of the jobs we had to do was to dig and hoe the garden for my grandfather. They would, as big as the piece of property, they hoed the whole thing. So I remember one time I'm with the pick, and I'm picking, and the dirt was hard, you know. And I kept looking back to see how much I had done. And in Italian, he said, "And the pagoda vagine." And what that means is, don't look backwards, look forward. You know.
I'll remember
so
that.
The next year, Mike and I, one of our buddies had a rototiller, gasoline operated. We thought, oh, this is great. It's not going to be that hard. We dig the whole thing up. He said, that's not good. It's better when you dig it by hand. So, but that was just one tiny thing. But it was, I kind of feel bad for a lot of the younger, like, to lose all the immigrants that came over. Just had to grow up with it, you know. And my grandfather had arthritis pretty bad, and he would always, I'd have to go, there was like woods across the street from us, and he'd bring this stick, and I'd go pick greens. He knew which greens were good to eat, which weren't, up in the woods. And he'd say, quist, that's this in Italian.
Right.
And this is how stupid I am. I'm looking at it as I have to work and pull all this stuff out, right? Now I give my left eye tooth for knowing which greens to pick. My grandmother would take them, cook them with oil and garlic, and
delicious. She'd
make spinach bread with it, and oh my God, it would, like, you'll never taste that again. And that, you know.
What about Christmas Eve in your house growing up Italian? What was that like?
So we did, for a while, we did the seven fishes. I can remember when we were little. They would get the smelts, and they'd be all full smelts with the heads on and everything. My grandfather would be cutting them and opening them up and everything. And back in Aliquippa, there was an Italian, I guess you want to call it, it was real old. It was right by, when you come under the tunnel at the Y, that they call that down there, where you could either go into J&L or turn left and go to 65,
right,
you know, to go to Monaco. There was the hotel that was there, then there was two little stores there. One was the G Hall Chinese Laundry, another one is, I remember it as Cadavacci. It was an old Italian store. I mean, so old, the lighting was on cords coming down with light bulbs. And you went in there, and they had the olives, and they had bacala, which is cod,
right,
that was salted, and then they'd buy that cod, take it home, put it in the laundry tub for 2 days to soak it, to get it to come back to its consistency. But so we would do that, and then later on we went to my godmother's and kind of changed it a little bit. One of the things, the Italians were big with the tuna fish in the sauce. That was one of my ones I never, because my godmother, God rest her soul, she was that Italian that everything had to be cooked, and I mean cooked good. So that moist tuna was like sawdust in the spaghetti.
Were you and your brother fluent in Italian? Pretty close.
No, going back to Dominic Crivelli,
right?
He said there's three Italian languages: the old Italian, the new Italian, and Mike and Dave's Italian.
Talk about Dominic.
But he understands everything I say.
Talk about Dominic for a minute, Avelli Concrete. And look, he's very modest, but what he did as a young man, explain to the audience.
Imagine they came over here from Italy.
Right.
I think they were in like 9th and 10th grade, him and Ugo, his brother.
Right.
And, you know, his dad worked on Neville Island in Pittsburgh, Des Moines Steel.
Right.
And that was like, he ended up, I think he retired and went back to their town is called Santa Fe, which is where my mother was from Pacentro.
Right.
We're halfway up the mountain on the west side. Santa Fe is all the way up at the top. So we were, actually, our towns aren't too, but as a crow flies, but you had to zigzag around the mountain to get to Santa Fe. But anyway, his dad goes back there and lives, you know, he retires. And they all say you could live like a king in Italy on a retirement from America, you know?
Right.
So Dominic and Ugo stayed over here and they started their business, and they were doing good, they were doing well, but there was two different visions of the business.
Right.
And it caused it, they split apart. And
right.
Now Dominic has his business and Ugo has his. And Dominic and I talk a lot because we're both had brothers in business. And one of the funny things Dominic always says, he says, "Hey, you don't have to argue anymore, do you?"
But listen, that's why brothers are family.
Right.
Family
you can argue and sit down and eat and never have a problem.
My parents would have a knockdown drag out, go to sleep, get up the next day, and it was like nothing ever happened. That's what you do. You just got to keep moving forward. But you know, we were talking about work ethic, and you mentioned Gelfo Distributing, Jerry Coleman, JR's Beer Warehouse. These are all friends of mine and have been for decades. Tell everybody how you, as a young entrepreneur, found a way to make that $5 an hour go a long way. Explain that to the audience.
Well, our next door neighbor, where we have the famous garage party, or used to have it, he worked, it was Gelfo's, and this John Brewer bought it. So Vince Oren, they needed help at Christmas time, you know, and that's back when you drive in and they'd shuttle the cases. It wasn't a drive-through, they'd shuttle them down. So we were the shuttle boys, you know, grab us.
Wooden cases.
Wooden cases, the big heavy cardboard cases of Rolling Rock, and you know, anyway, so I think I was in 10th, going to 11th grade, and John Brewer said, "Dave, I got a little project. I got a deal going on with Coleman Bottling in Beaver Falls. They make pop and soda for you Eastern people.
Best chocolate pop anyway.
But, oh, for sure. But they had those old pop crates, RC and Coca-Cola. They were about that high, and they'd have wood boards and metal bands around. So he said, I can get these, and I'll give you 10 cents for every crate that you fix." Well, I was in 11th grade, and I was in an academic program because I was going to go to college for electrical engineering, and I lined all my classes up. So I started in the morning and I was finished at 1 o'clock. I didn't have any study halls or anything. So I would get out on a job training. I went down and fixed pop crates. But I was telling Rob here earlier, that big truck with all the garage doors would come in, and you just see hundreds and hundreds of these wooden pop crates, and I'd go, "Oh my God," you know. And I didn't get a dolly and wheel them in, but I had my nice little workshop area built in the beer distributor. And I would pound away at these things, and I got to be real good. You'd tear one apart to salvage parts out of it, use this and that, put a few more nails, and it was good as new, you know. And so I probably, by the time I got out of school and got down there, it was 2 o'clock, and and I finished at 5 because Grandma would always have dinner. You know, my grandmother lived next door. My mother and dad both worked, so my mother had to set up there. Come home, dinner's all ready for
Every
you.
day.
And it was good homemade Italian.
Oh.
Anyway, I would make roughly on an average $5 an hour, so $15 a day.
And that's
What?
when they were putting that in your hand every day,
Yeah.
cash.
And that was in 1973, 74.
But here's the thing about you and your brother. As successful as you've been through sweat equity, hard work, listen, to see him in his work clothes as opposed to being dressed up tonight looking like a movie star, it's a completely different picture. And anybody who knows Dave will agree. He likes to get his hands dirty, and he will go to work and give you, believe me, an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. But you guys have always remained so modest. I mean, you're in this town that you love. You deal with certain things and people who become family, not just business acquaintances. But to meet Mike and Dave Halama 30 years ago, it's the same person today. So I guess all of those times in the garden with your grandfather and being around your mom and dad and those dinners with your grandmother kept you guys grounded.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the same person that I met 30 years ago, you know?
Yeah, it's...
You're good people. And I gotta tell you, your dad, Shaq and Hack and all these guys who befriended me back in the early 90s, about 30 years ago at the Manaka Band Room, they took care of me. And I was talking about Dominic Lucy the other day at the Silver Bar, and his father, and that place, right?
And then Dominic Lucy, the old man,
Right.
was like this with my grandfather.
Those-
They were from Pacentra too. And I don't know where.
They're like everybody.
I'm gonna have to show you. I'll get you a picture and I'll send it to you. They would go on Sunday and go down to the old Silver Bar. This was before they remodeled it. It's the Draft House now.
Right.
But
The big remodel was in 1960.
yeah. So this was in the 50s. They would have been going there. All these guys, dark suits, hats on, white shirt with ties. They'd go in the back, and Christy the shoemaker, Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Pepino was they're our cousins also. They'd all be back there. Dominic Raymond, the whole Italian crew, and they come. If you're from Pacentra, they call them Pagindran. So all the Pagindrans would meet in the back on Sunday after they had their pasta and everything at home. They'd go down to the Silver Bar.
You realize Pagentro is like this whole corridor here.
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot of families and
We got
immigrants.
to do one thing for the people who really love the history of this, and I love Manaka. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. We were with Tracy the other day over at Comfortably Young, which used to be Celeste Tavern, and we couldn't remember what it was before Celeste, but lo and behold, he's going to tell you right now.
Back in the day before Tony Celeste bought it, it was called Tasica's.
Yeah.
And they even remember that.
The big beer was Blatt's beer on draft.
Amen. Listen, before I let you go, this time of year, obviously your brother not being here, and I don't even like to think about it, and I got to tell you, many nights coming back from KDK, I go by this building, make the sign of the cross, and I think about Mike. Mike was such a mentor, such a friend, always took time. I sat with him in this office when I first came back to Manaka for my second go around, and he was such a comforting soul. And to see him sitting in the bar at the Manaka Sons of Italy when I would walk down those steps off of Pacific Avenue, it just made my world a whole
You
lot
knew
brighter.
it was going to be a good night.
It was.
Yeah.
But because he always had some sage advice, and we would get into conversations about Henry Mancini and Manaka and just moments in this community and what he believed the future was all about. And he cared about the next generation.
Can I do a quick sidebar
Yeah,
about
yeah,
the
do it.
Mancini
Do it.
and the piano? Did he tell you about the
I
piano?
was going to do it, but I didn't. I
Real
was afraid I
quick.
wasn't going to get it all right.
So our friend Joe Lakis gives Mike this old upright piano, and we have it in our. So we were starting in a 2-stall electrical shop, right? And it's just beat up. There's dust and everything. And Joe says, "This used to be Henry Mancini's piano. Well, it's sitting there. It's a year and a half, 2 years, and like we needed the space there, right? Right now, if you remember at the garage bar, it's where the draft beer dispenser is, with a picture of Art Rooney above it.
Yes.
But anyway,
Yeah.
that's where the piano sat. So I said, Mike, I said, you either got to get this piano, do something, or I'm going to get a chainsaw and cut it up and get it the hell out of here. So
Well, but you
he
understand.
kind of lit the fire under here.
Do you know the whole story behind Moon River, Breakfast at Tiffany's?
Yeah.
Tell that story. This is
Looking up, he lived in West Aliquippa, and one night he was, think that was prior to Crow's Island being filled in, where the
Right.
J&L built a basic oxygen. You were talking about furnaces.
Right.
Anyway, he was looking out and the moon was shining down on the Ohio River.
That's
That was
what-
it.
And I'm going to give you one more. John Diagardi and I, Elsa DeChico, no longer with us, but died after a long life into her 90s in Coriopolis. Her dad said to her, "We're going to meet the priest in Monaco, where I want you to have your wedding, but we're going to have it on a Saturday," which nobody did at that time. And he said, "Don't worry, I'll make it work." But he said, "I have to stop off in West Aliquippa first because there's a young musician there that I want to play at your wedding." He was like
Wow.
16 at the time,
Yeah.
and that musician was Henry Mancini.
Wow.
So I'm just saying, we live in such an incredible place, Beaver County, and the Halama brothers were such a big part of it. And look, they're way too modest, but I want to talk about one other thing. Brad Davis and this golf tournament. Mickey Davis, two guys from Monaco who played in the NBA along with Billy Zoff, which is pretty incredible when you think of probably the biggest population we've ever seen, anywhere from maybe 8 to 10,000, and that was at the height. But this town is doing so many incredible things. I wouldn't want to raise a family, wouldn't want to be anywhere else but Monaco. But what happened and how did this whole relationship with Brad and the golf tournament and all the good that you've done with that, how'd that start?
Well,
And this is Mark Cuban's Brad, by the way, Davis for the Dallas Mavericks.
we just sold part of the
Yes,
Mavericks.
to the Sands. Good stuff.
But it's good.
It is good for him. He's a good guy.
Little rumor about gambling coming to Texas, but that's not for us.
I'm all good with that.
In the early days, it was actually Sonny Nichols, Dave Nichols.
I didn't know that.
Him and Horace Nickel, his brother, who he had a bar. Anyway, they kind of started this. It was a real rough thing, and I'm trying to think how many years. And don't quote me, but I think it was around. They started this about 10 years. Had a golf outing. Then he used that money for the football and basketball programs at Monaco. And back then, this was just Monaco, no Central Valley Warriors. Okay, this was purely the Indians. Anyway.
They'll never let that go. We love Central Valley, but Monaco,
They're all good. It's
they'll
all
never
good.
let- That's okay.
It all came together.
It did
right?
perfectly.
But so they were starting to get a little bit older, and it was too much for them. So I don't know who Brad approached, but he's real good friends with Mike, Dave Scarcella, Scooby,
Right.
John Mateer, Mike Dragonjack. And in fact, Mike Dragonjack's office was in his building for the first 10 years. And we're real good combs there.
And Seal.
Yeah, Chris Mangin, he was another one.
Yeah.
He's Brad's brother-in-law. Okay,
I
so
didn't know that.
yeah, he married Brad's sister.
Rena.
So that's a little Monaco trivia there.
Well, I'm going to leave you with this because Bee's arms are getting tired,
Yeah.
and we've been here. I've got to head on down.
You're gonna have to. Half of this will be on the floor.
No, she'll be okay. But I got to tell you, if this could be heaven to me, I would sign up. Hack, your dad, and Shaq, and give their full names so everybody knows who I'm talking about. Hack
is McLean.
Howie.
Shaq is
Chakrin.
Chakrin.
Right.
Yeah. Damn, I've known him for Shaq. He was actually on our
Well,
softball team. But
So,
anyway.
2 o'clock in the morning when they would stay open late, and we would be there from bar bingo enjoying some great food that actually fed me because I was a bachelor then. And around 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd look over and Shaq would be drinking that delicious Schlitz. No way.
Oh my God.
And I'd go, "Shaq,
Always.
please,
Never saw
for
him
me,
come.
will you?" He would stand up, looking like Barry Fitzgerald, if you may remember, going my way with the Bells of St. Mary's as well, with Bing Crosby playing the other priest. He'd hold up that can of Schlitz, and he'd look right into that abyss, and he would go, "Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling." And I literally,
Yeah.
tears running down my face. And your dad would always go, "Bravo." And we would say, it was the best. Sam Roberts bartending.
You never met Shaq's father, Eddie, that was the mailman.
No.
For as big as Shaq was, he was this little skinny guy, but man, he gave that Irish drinking a good.
Oh, we had so much fun. Thank you for this Christmas
Wow.
present. And I got some swag too, which I'm real happy. I love you. You and your brother. Thanks
And
for
I did let you sit in the captain's chair today.
Listen, I said to him, "Can I come over?" And he goes, "We haven't touched anything in this office."
Oh yeah.
It's still surreal, certain
Yeah.
people in your life, and I must tell you, I never thought he would leave me as soon as he did. But in the time that I knew him, every day of my life, somehow, some way, he enters my life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you feel the same.
Oh, there's
yeah.
good days when we love them, and there's other days when some of his stuff crops up. And
I know.
that we want to just kiss him and beat his head. You know?
Allen's Hardware, Tony Allen, no longer here.
Oh,
Good
great
friend.
guy, great guy.
Jimmy Manganello, Club at Shadow Lakes, great guy. Cheers. And to all of you, Bona Natal, happy holidays, and embrace your family.
Yeah.
Love each and every one of them like I love the Halama family. It's your Pratt Pack. Enjoy your weekend.
Salute.